Part 34. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 332. How could this not surprise or even horrify observers? More than 200 kilometers away from the Earth. Although this place can still be regarded as being in the Earth's atmosphere, it is no longer a place that ordinary aircraft can reach. That's space. Although the figure of the big mosquito disappeared directly at this time, they were not surprised at all, because the behavior of this big mosquito had already completely surprised them. A giant mosquito can actually fly to the outermost part of the atmosphere relying on its own body constitution. And judging from his appearance, if he hadn't suddenly disappeared, even if he flew directly into the vacuum of the universe, it would not be impossible. This situation made the observers stunned and felt a bit like they were dreaming. Every time an aircraft on Earth wants to fly into space, it requires a lot of energy. Even if it fails, it will be extremely harmful to the economy. Big blow. But this big mosquito actually got on it as soon as he asked, as if it was as simple as going to the toilet. This is not to mention how he can survive in the universe, and how he can endure the huge temperature contrast. It only says that he was not hindered at all under the sniper fire of red light, and he still flew extremely fast. In space, things are already unimaginable to humans. What's more, in space of more than 200 kilometers, there is already a place without any air. A creature that relies on spreading its wings to fly is simply impossible to fly there. But the fact is that none of these people know. Why is it that when a giant mosquito reaches a place where its wings are impossible to fly, it still maintains a terrifying flying speed? How on earth is this done? No scientist can explain it at all. Things have caused uproar again. The fact that Big Mosquito is a cosmic creature seems to have been settled for a long time, but this move he made even exceeded the impact of his being a cosmic creature, causing a huge noise. Can you physically fly in the universe? Cosmic creatures can do this kind of thing? No matter how you look at it, it is inconsistent with biological or even scientific principles. People on Earth cannot understand. But Jia Yan didn't care about them at this time. Just got into his own aircraft. Even he was a little tired after flying continuously for so long. After all, this is flying from the ground to space, a confrontation with the Earth's gravity. This process is obviously not that simple. Jia Yan found that his physical strength had also been greatly consumed, and he had finally regained his physical fitness on the ground. It's almost consumed. He walked towards the empty space of the aircraft, where Jia Yan had been practicing. He spent more time in this aircraft than he had ever spent anywhere before. He took out the supplies he had reserved. These materials are all things he obtained in the universe. The main one was that the two civilizations were affected by the explosion when they were fighting. And the machinery becomes scrap metal in the universe. Some of these machines still have a very complete appearance. Jia Yan arrived at this place and took out his supplies one by one and observed them. After, he just picked these things one by one, and then put the selected ones aside. These things. It doesn't have much effect on him anymore, but it seems to be of some help to Earth's technology. So Jia Yan just took them out. Maybe in the future, he could give these things to scientific research institutes and other places on the Earth, and maybe he could develop some powerful weapons. Maybe when you say it, you will wonder why Jia Yan is so good to humans, but at this time, Jia Yan thinks that his combat power is not enough to face all the metal monsters. What's more, there will be those so-called exploration ships in the future. If the people on Earth can improve their combat effectiveness, their pressure will be less. After all, the biggest reason why he fights metal monsters on Earth is to protect his family. For this purpose, it is okay to cooperate with the people on Earth to a certain level. But this is just one of the reasons why I came here. When I come here, I can do more. Jia Yan's compound eyes were shining faintly, and he focused his attention on the operation panel. At this time, What he was thinking about was trying to find out more functions or some secrets of the aircraft. After all, he had been operating this machine for a long time, and he still understood its general functions. It works best at the best time, so now is actually good. Jia Yan walked up to the aircraft control lever. The place was lit up due to his remote control operation, and there were some words he didn't recognize on the panel that were flashing. In the past few days, Jia Yan knew that these words were real-time information about the aircraft. However, he didn't understand a single word, so there was no help at all before. But now he plans to take in all this information. At this time, the big Mosquito had his own thoughts in his mind. At this time, he started the aircraft first. After the aircraft started, it started to move slowly. In this place in space where there is no up, down, left or right, the aircraft operated by Jia Yan first slowly sprayed out a faint blue flame from behind, and then flew out in a direction away from the Earth. If anyone on Earth sees the speed of the aircraft at this time, they will definitely think that the alien aircraft does not seem to be very fast and is nothing special. But what they don't know is that this speed is only the speed at startup, and the aircraft driven by Jia Yan is an aircraft dedicated to flying. If they know that this aircraft can finally increase its speed to more than 1 million kilometers, the speed will definitely shock your jaw. However, Jia Yan didn't think that much. He just felt that this place seemed to be within the exploration range of the people on Earth. If he did some actions, there would be too many exposure possibilities. Although he didn't want people on Earth to know that he had an aircraft, it doesn't matter, but it's better not to expose it. What's more, for his aircraft, it is simply a piece of cake to leave the exploration range of the Earth. The view of the Earth behind them quickly left, and the aircraft began to accelerate. Let's go near the moon, it's far away from the detection of people on the Earth, and you can also use the moon to do some evasive exercises. Jia Yan operates the aircraft and heads for the moon. After several months of operation, he has become extremely comfortable in pure stick flying. It was said that it was heading towards the moon, but when the speed of the aircraft accelerated, Jia Yan found that the huge planet in the distance was rapidly enlarging in front of his eyes. Close. Not even an hour. It's really fast. Jia Yan quickly operated the aircraft and stopped above the moon. The aircraft stayed steadily above the moon. My first purpose when I returned to the aircraft this time was to see if I could really fly from the Earth to space. I have already accomplished this. The second point is what I did before. I dismantled a few of those combat machines and handed them over to the people on Earth for research when they return to Earth. If it can prompt them to develop something to fight against metal monsters, that will be considered as achieving the goal. As for the third and most important purpose, it is to make certain attempts to see if the aircraft can be operated better. It would be great if more functions could be developed. Jia Yan's actual plan was that if the Earth could no longer survive, he would take the risk of driving an aircraft to the ground and pick up his family. But that was the worst case scenario, and he didn't want to do it unless something unexpected happened. However, aircraft training is urgent and cannot wait any longer. From Jia Yan's several battles with metal monsters on the ground, it seemed that although the combat power of those mining machines was no longer scary, the number was too large, and they had that terrifying red light to assist, so Jia Yan had no confidence able to protect his family from their attacks. Moreover, in the days to come, there would be threats from those exploration ships. Jia Yan would have a headache thinking about them. Each of these things was more powerful than the last. If his family were not here, he would have wanted to leave the Earth immediately and hide in a place where he could live. Place. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 333. Now Jia Yan himself doubts that as long as he has a certain amount of oxygen, he can survive. Even on any of the satellites of Jupiter or Saturn, as long as he has a trace of oxygen, he might be able to survive. But that would be too painful, and the family would not be able to let it go. So Jia Yan still wants to see if he can do anything on Earth. After all, this is for your own future survival. Actually, there is one more thing I have to do, and that is to see if I can study the energy problem of this aircraft. Jia Yan looked at the text on the metal panel of the current aircraft. He already knew that one of the graphical indicators was the remaining amount of the energy system. Fortunately, this aircraft did not know what high-level energy it used. Neptune's flight to Earth only consumes about 20% of its energy. Even if the remaining energy is enough for him to travel around the stars in the solar system, if this problem is not taken seriously early, it will definitely be a big problem in the future. Okay, there is still enough energy, let's try the detailed operations first. Jia Yan finally started to try the specific operations of flying. This time he looked at the things on the panel. He observed the buttons carefully. Some buttons that looked very dangerous, he did not dare to press randomly. As for the others, he pressed them once to try the effect. I see, this is for locking the speed. This is for setting the direction and angle. If I had known these functions earlier, I wouldn't be so tired when I came back. After a simple test, Jia Yan discovered many functions. It's not that he didn't think of testing the function before, but if he damaged the aircraft before reaching the Earth, then the sky would really be in trouble and the Earth would be inoperable. But it's different now. He's still not far from the Earth, and he's already familiar with the basics of aircraft, even if something happens. He thought it could be solved. Okay. Now test some more detailed functions, and understand the above text. What Jia Yan actually wants most is to learn the writing of this so-called Asta people, but he is not a language expert. In that case, we might be able to develop all the functions of this aircraft. But he was not a linguist, so he had to settle for the next best thing. Use the reaction of the operation to see if you can understand the general meaning of these words. This text also appears on the operating lever, which means to go straight. And it is now combined with these words. Does it mean that the function of this text is to perform some kind of straight operation? Jia Yan studied it slowly. This aircraft is performing many actions very close to the moon. And he seemed a little weird. It is obviously a powerful alien aircraft, but it appears to be out of control from time to time, which is heart-wrenching. But this aircraft can always be used in critical situations. After being operated back, after all, his pilot is a combat professional with extremely fast reaction speed. Jia Yan just stumbled and continued to conduct his own operation experiments. This time he had made a decision not to return to Earth until he understood most of the functions of this aircraft. After all, if he returns to Earth again, the metal monster will definitely not welcome him, and Jia Yan can say that there is nothing he can do about the red light. If you go back rashly, you are very likely to get injured. But Jia Yan also has his own ideas in his heart. If possible, next time go to one of their buildings that emit red light and see if you can destroy one. If you can do it, then this kind of red light is not impossible for me. Something to face. Jia Yan continued his own attempts. Operational skills are slowly improving at this time. But what he didn't know was that it was extremely far away. It is close to the orbit of Neptune, but it is still a certain distance away from Neptune. In that place, a huge interstellar material flying in the void of the universe, against the background of the bright Neptune, was moving slowly. The signal base of the Empire. This base is overflowing with light, with many strange rays of light shining. The typical Empire style is rich in color and decorated with many beautiful things. In the place where there are many beautiful things, there is a very beautiful woman, like a graceful and luxuriously dressed lady, and like a green girl with beautiful arms. She is wearing simple and elegant clothes, walking slowly. This is a stunning woman with a slender figure and a gooseneck look, showing an unfazed expression of favor and humiliation. Her face was like a spring breeze, as if she had received some good news, and she was looking forward to it with a smile. This woman is naturally Jia Yan's old acquaintance, De Funi. She seemed to have received some reply from the Imperial exploration ship, and at this time, she felt happy. But just when the woman was still excited, a slight noise appeared in this huge base. Why are there so many heat sources on the Earth? This should be the superheated light source of those Asta mining machines. What on earth is it that allows them to attack with such huge power? A solemn look appeared in Daphne's eyes. She had already received a reply from the exploration ship. If things went well, she would get a recommendation from the exploration ship, and it was very likely that she would obtain a true imperial status. So at this time, she didn't want any accidents to happen. She wants to protect those minerals under the earth. The woman quickly twisted her waist and walked towards a monitoring facility in the huge base. It takes a full 40 minutes for light to travel between the Earth and Neptune. Even with the technological strength that Delphine has mastered, the war situation on the Earth can only be roughly monitored, and it is impossible to completely monitor the changes there. In the heart, it's actually an attack from thousands of superheated light sources. What on earth is it that makes these mining machines waste energy so much? It seems that they haven't been defeated yet. De Funi saw the surveillance, and there were terrifying streaks above. Surveillance picture of huge light. Since she could not achieve precise image stabilization, she had no way of knowing what those thousands of red rays of light that broke through the sky were attacking. But De Funi understood that there must have been changes on the Earth. Otherwise, it would be impossible for those mining machines that have lost their representatives from Asta to waste so much energy for no reason. The fact that I will become a member of the Empire is right before my eyes. No matter what it is, I will not allow it to destroy my 300-year dream. Daphne's tall body began to move quickly. She walks very fast and has a unique and heroic charm on her face. Her dream is so close that she cannot give up. Even if there are any changes on the other side of the Earth, she must go and control the situation. Not long after, the repaired flying stick aircraft, like a wild horse full of power, quickly crossed out of the signal base, heading towards the Earth, and started to move at extremely high speeds in an instant. Moon. This is a place with no air and not much gravity. As a star with many human shadows, the Moon is near the Earth and has been explored by humans several times. If things like metal monsters had not appeared, perhaps in the near future, humans would truly rely on their own power to fly to the Moon. Embark on your own starry sky path. But at this time, there is a life form in this place that obviously does not belong to the Earth. It is slowly stepping and jumping here. For the appearance of this creature, please is like a mosquito from the Earth, except that this mosquito is incredibly huge. He has a long mouth, a dark body, and 6 terrifying legs, each of which is more than 20 meters long. He walks slowly among the sand and stones on the surface of the Moon. With every step he takes, his body can fly forward across a long distance. This monster is naturally Jia Yan. The aircraft stayed not far away. This time Jia Yan tried to operate the aircraft and simulate landing. In the past, he always flew the aircraft in the vacuum of space, but there will definitely be a time when he will land it in the future, so if he doesn't train at this time, he may make mistakes in temporary operations in the future. So now he is driving a spacecraft to stay on the Moon's surface. Here, there is no chani or laurel tree, just endless sand and stones. Thanks to the book Friend Dancing Solo for the holiday reward of 2,800 starting coins, thank you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 334. A feeling of desolation filled the surface of the planet. As a satellite of the Earth, the Moon is also the only satellite. The secret of her capture by the Earth is still a mystery. Because of her size, she ranks 5th among all natural satellites in the entire solar system. The previous ones are several of them are satellites of Jupiter and Saturn, the giant gas planets. However, the Earth, which itself has a small mass, can capture a star as huge as the Moon as its own satellite. This is something that is difficult to explain in astronomy. So much so that the mystery she formed has not yet been solved by astronomers on Earth. Jia Yan walks on the ground of the Moon, and has complicated feelings about this star that he has been looking up to since he was a child. Jia Yan naturally has a certain interest in exploration. However, this place is not as mysterious as imagined. The ground is nothing but sand and gravel, and it is extremely desolate. Not long after walking, Jia Yan gave up exploring. Returned to the aircraft. Maybe the traces he left on the Moon's surface will become a hot topic for those who come after him, who knows. Not long after, the huge aircraft slowly took off. The Moon's gravity is not strong, but whether it lands or takes off, the aircraft still has a certain impact. It can be seen that if I fly an aircraft to the Earth, I must also pay attention to this aspect. After simulating landing and taking off on the ground, Jia Yan already had a little idea of what he needed to pay attention to when flying an aircraft to take off and land. Looking at the surveillance screen, which showed the lunar sand and gravel ground getting smaller and smaller, he couldn't help but feel certain about his operations and practice over the past few days. These days have not been in vain. Not only did he understand more operations, but during this period, he also barely understood some of the Asturian characters on the screen. The most exciting thing is that after his attempt the day before yesterday, he opened an operation console that seemed to have nothing to do with flight operations. On the display panel on this console, something that Jia Yan could guess appeared. After a simple operation, he was finally sure. This display panel is something similar to a computer on Earth. It may just be a data query device, but Jia Yan can also pass it. Do some micromanipulation on the aircraft, such as air. When he discovered this system the day before yesterday, he mistakenly clicked the function to turn off the air system. As a result, the aircraft lost oxygen for 5 hours. Jia Yan was left in a hurry, and finally he recovered the delayed operation through memory. Others include micromanipulation of gravity in aircraft, and the opening and closing of some metal hatches. After all, there are still many hatches in such a large aircraft. Some places also have certain functions. It's a pity that Jia Yan's body is too big and he can't try these things. These things are all part of Jia Yan's interest, and they are his greatest effectiveness. It's his computer-like function. In other words, technology on Earth. There is a strong influence of the Asta people, and the things in this operating system are actually the same as the operation methods of computers on Earth. There is a certain commonality. Through simple operations, Jia Yan actually understood a little bit about how the system operates. Very good. With this system, I only need to spend time carefully pondering and studying in the future. With my current memory and understanding ability, it might be possible to master the language of the Asta people through it. Jia Yan looked at the operation panel in front of him with a sparkle in his eyes. Once he has mastered the language of the Asta people, the effect of this system will be even greater. There is an unknown amount of information in it, enough for him to learn and comprehend. Maybe this is his stepping stone. Through it, he can discover more mysteries about the universe and life. Okay, I have gained some confidence in the general operation of the aircraft. Now it's time for me to return to the Earth. I hope those metal monsters haven't turned to attack the village. I think it won't be a problem. After all, they don't know that I was there. If you stay there, you won't know that I am still related to the people in the village. Jia Yan is still quite optimistic about whether the village will be attacked. The aircraft is in space, crossing a straight line. Head towards the Earth. At this time, in the distant starry sky, a flying stick aircraft finally reached its ultimate speed. In the aircraft, there was a look of confusion on Dave Funi's face. She couldn't understand that in this starry sky, the representatives of the three civilizations, except for her, had all died. Who were they on Earth with those Ostos? Human mining machine combat. If that big mosquito is still on Earth, he may have caused a riot in the mining machines, but this is simply impossible. He was already in the land of Neptune and was killed by the explosion. So what is it? Daphne was extremely wary of a new potential opponent. So now she is heading towards the Earth quickly. However, even if this flying stick aircraft has been repaired and perfected, it will still take more than half a month to reach the Earth at its speed. No one knows what changes will happen to the Earth during this period. A disc-like aircraft finally approached the orbit of the Earth. Compared with the shabby appearance before, its appearance has improved to some extent now. Although it still looks a bit broken, the parts that were originally attached to it and were damaged by the explosion have completely fallen off at this time, except for part of the cabin. The door was tightly closed, blocking the several broken openings. It was very similar to the aircraft in the science fiction blockbusters on Earth. Jia Yan operated the aircraft. This time, he still parked the aircraft in the warm layer, which was only more than 200 kilometers above the Earth. There are some satellites circling here, but they cannot detect the aircraft driven by Jia Yan. Even though Jia Yan's aircraft is extremely broken and is still a castrated version, it is still impossible for the Earth to surpass him. The technological items are basically two levels. If Jia Yan is willing to hand over this aircraft to Earth scientists for research, because it is simple and easy to study, it may be more likely to make a big leap in Earth's technology quickly. But it is impossible for Jia Yan to do this. His only means of transportation in the universe is this aircraft. But Jia Yan still brought gifts to the Earth this time. The body of a giant mosquito appears in space. The aircraft cabin door opened, and machines that were either broken or seemingly intact were thrown out one by one. They are the battle machines on the battlefield of Neptune, combat machines whose functions were stopped either because of the battle or because of the impact of the final explosion. Jia Yan's figure is busy among them. Not long after, the 5 aircraft he selected appeared in the warm layer where the temperature was not low. Among these machines, 3 are the combat machines of the Asta people. After all, the people on Earth seem to have something to do with the Asta civilization. In other words, is it Oro, the representative of the Asta people, who is here specifically? Guide the Earth civilization to get closer to their civilization. So these machines may be more useful for the Earth. These 3 are all of the same model. One is extremely damaged, the other is moderately damaged, and the third seems to have no damage at all. Jia Yan believes that handing it over to the Earth will be beneficial to their research. However, it is still a relatively difficult task to take them down properly. Jia Yan looked at the Earth below. Find bookstore. After 4 or 5 days away, the Earth still seems to be the same. Looking from a distance of more than 200 kilometers, any war or the destruction of mankind seems to have nothing to do with the huge Earth. She was still spinning without any pause, and white clouds appeared and floated faintly at this time. The blue sea renders the color of the entire Earth so vividly. Jia Yan looked down, and then his respiratory organs stretched out and exhaled a little bit of his breath. As soon as the gas appears in the vacuum of the universe, it seems to be extracted by a powerful vacuum cleaner, and its shadow disappears in an instant. Then, a light flashed in the big mosquito's compound eyes. He decided to take action. The last time I went down to the ground, the metal monsters didn't seize the opportunity to attack me. Does this mean that they don't have a strong defensive tendency against intruders from space like me? After all, they are all designed according to the design. A moving machine, the behavior is relatively rigid. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 335. Thinking of this, Jia Yan had an idea of whether he would be attacked by red light again during his whereabouts. Get down. Using the power of brainwaves to control the 5 machines, Jia Yan ordered them to follow him and fly downward. Hot. The temperature begins to rise. The temperature of the warm layer was not low. As Jia Yan gradually accelerated, he began to rub against the atmosphere. It was more like a heating device was installed on his body, and the temperature was extremely high. He began to use his brainwave power to continuously reduce the speed of his body's descent. However, having to control both his body and 5 metal machines that are not much lighter than his body is still extremely difficult for his brainwave power. The surrounding temperature begins to rise rapidly. The warm layer was quickly broken through. Boom boom boom. The air could already make sounds, fire appeared around him, and everything in Jia Yan's sight was filled with flames. He was falling rapidly. Several machines also showed fire. If they were not alien combat machines with extremely strong workmanship and defense, they might have been burned in the friction. Jia Yan's body also felt a burning sensation. He almost felt like he was turning into charcoal. But he has already had a breakthrough experience, so he won't really be so panicked this time. He believed in his exoskeleton defense that even those battles would not harm him much. These frictional flames could not harm him at all. However, Jia Yan's body felt a little strenuous at this time. This was not because his temperature resistance had reached its limit, but because it was becoming more and more difficult to use the power of brain waves to control the 5 machines to keep them from being far away from him, so his brainwave power was struggling. The 5 machines shook violently at this time, because they had different friction angles with the Earth's atmosphere, so the directions they wanted to fly away due to resistance were also different. Jia Yan reluctantly forced them to gather together, which was obviously more difficult. Boom 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 boom. If people on the ground look towards the sky, they can see a huge fireball in the sky. It hit the ground quickly. It burned extremely hard. And those who are interested can notice that its falling speed is definitely much slower than that of ordinary meteors. And in the sky, the direction of the fall. There were also subtle adjustments, as if someone was manipulating the direction. That's right. A giant mosquito in the flames. Even in the raging flames, he is still using his brainwave power to fine-tune the direction of his fall. Although the speed is still extremely fast. But after experiencing the initial discomfort, Jia Yan finally found a way. He adjusted his falling body to the best angle. Boom 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 boom. The sound of flames kept coming to his ears, this time it was Jia Yan. But I didn't have any worries at all, just during the period of my whereabouts. The compound eyes are shining brightly. He is like an emperor who reigns over the world, looking down upon the world while he is down. This feeling of joy. How comfortable. The ground was getting closer and closer. At this time, Jia Yan saw the city getting closer and closer on the ground, and he also saw more and more humans. Each of these human beings looked at this meteorite in amazement, but they didn't know that this extraterrestrial visitor that they were so focused on was actually a giant mosquito monster that penetrated the heaven and earth a few days ago and went to outer space. Jia Yan's body was still flying quickly over a huge building. The building of the metal monster. It is indeed extremely tall. The height of each building is 300 to 400 meters, right? It's terrifying. So many tall buildings have been built in a short period of time. But no matter how powerful it is, I will come over later to carry out the construction and attempted hit. Jia Yan was in the air and quickly passed a super tall building underneath. Because his speed was too fast, or maybe this building really wouldn't carry out defensive attacks against visitors from outer space, so Jia Yan flew over it. Above his head, the other party didn't make any move. Jia Yan continued to move forward. In just a short period of time, he broke through hundreds of meters of atmosphere and got close to the ground. On the ground, a vast city appeared in front of Jia Yan. This city has been baptized by the flames of war, and there are many refugees and hungry and cold people who are still staying here. They all want to find a refuge in this place known as the safest place in the world. Some people survived by relying on government relief, and some people obtained job opportunities from the remaining government agencies. They finally tried their best to live a working life that was common in the past but is extremely rare now. Among them, there is a person who Jia Yan may have a certain impression of. Jiang Shiming is sorting out his clothes. As a newcomer who has only worked in a government unit for more than 2 months, the biggest reason why he can stay in the unit is his previous systematic research on the big mosquito. Now he has stopped clamoring that those giant mosquitoes are just one, but in his heart, he still has great confidence in this. I'm going out. Please stay at home. It's not very peaceful outside. Recently he was ready, picked up the documents he had prepared last night, and was about to leave. At this time, a woman was in the simple house where he lived. She was a beautiful girl. She had long, silky hair, a delicate face, and a slender eyebrow. She was all beautiful. Even among former movie stars, she is considered a pretty beauty. This girl Jia Yan is no stranger to her, or in other words, she is the existence that Jia Yan is more familiar with. She is Yetongyu. I understand, you should pay attention to safety when you go out to work. The girl smiled and nodded to Jiang Shiming. Jiang Shiming also smiled slightly and then went out. Are these two finally together? The answer is wrong. The two of them seem to have stupid heads. Even in such a disaster, they are still ignorant about emotional matters. During the past 6 months, they have been able to share the adversity together. Their relationship is far better than that of ordinary men and women, and even some horrific experiences. It was difficult for both husband and wife to get through it together, but they stayed together and helped each other get through it. It's just that little hurdle, but I still haven't passed it. Seeing Jiang Shiming leave, Yetongyu smiled. Maybe they all understand that it's just that for certain things, it's better to just let nature take its course. They met together by chance, and later became related because of the giant mosquito. After that, there was a war, and it was like the end of the world, and we spent it together. It is no longer an ordinary friendship, it can be described. We still live together now. Just when Yetongyu wanted to take the clothes to the balcony to wash up, I saw that there seemed to be an extra sun in the sky. The huge flames, carrying the burning turbulent air, smashed crazily towards the ground of the city. Boom 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 boom. Something like a meteorite came fiercely, very fast, and its momentum was terrifying. No one doubted that if it was hit by this meteorite, any building would instantly collapse or even turn into rubbish. The route of this meteorite was towards the house where Yetongyu and Jiang Shiming lived temporarily. The fire is getting closer and closer, and even the things wrapped in it are gradually starting to look a little different. Yetongyu looked at this approaching thing with horror in his heart. She was so frightened that she dropped the clothes in her hands on the floor. Her fingers, which were slightly frostbitten from starching the clothes, looked extremely pale at this moment. The firelight didn't show the slightest pity for the beauty, it radiated to the front of the house. Ah! Yetongyu screamed and looked at the scene in front of her in horror. After that, she saw a scene that she might never forget in her life. The fire was just before it approached the house. The turbulent speed suddenly dropped. Boom boom boom. Several of these things quickly revealed their true forms from the fireball as their speed suddenly slowed down. Big mosquito. This scene made the girl, who was frightened, even widen her eyes. The giant mosquito was actually in this meteorite-like flame, as if it were a divine soldier descending from the sky. With his huge figure, even the houses underground were covered by his figure. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 336. The black exoskeleton, which was so black that it seemed to be able to absorb even light, was already very different from the first time he met her. And it seems that after growing in size several times, this big mosquito has retained some of its previous physical characteristics. At this moment, Yetongyu almost immediately continued to conclude his theory that the big mosquitoes are the same one. Whistle, roar, roar. The big mosquito, which was almost about to hit the house, was forced to a stop by a seemingly invisible force. It started to speed again, spread its wings, and flew away quickly in the direction of the Shanghai Stock Exchange. He didn't pay any attention to the house at his feet that he almost crashed into, nor did he expect that there was actually a woman in this place that he had known before and had many connections with. But even if he knew, he wouldn't care. Even in the house below, the woman seemed to be a little excited after feeling that the big mosquito was still the same one. After being happy for a while, she calmed down again. Haha, there is no civilian network now. Even if I find something decisive, I can't share it with others. Besides, even if I really verify that this big mosquito is the one we know, what's the use? Woolen cloth. The girl looked out the window. Not far away, there were several buildings that had collapsed due to the invasion of metal monsters. When she saw this, she shook her head. Today, it is no longer the time when she can become famous after proving the conclusion that the big mosquito is just one. Forget it, Jiang Shiming and I will live a good life together. The girl put her thoughts at that moment behind her. But what she didn't expect was that the entanglement with the giant mosquito monster, Jia Yan, would continue to unfold as a young man and woman. Boom boom boom. Jia Yan is flying in the sky. He looked at the house behind him. I secretly cried out luck. Fortunately, I used my brainwave power in time. I didn't really hit the house. Otherwise, it would have been a sin. Jia Yan knew that there were many residents in that house, so he secretly called out luck. Of course he didn't know. There was a woman he had seen in the house since he was a little mosquito. He was no longer the one hiding in the taxi. There are little mosquitoes hiding everywhere. But one that can stand proudly in the sky, even with metal monsters. Even those representatives of alien life need to face up to a giant mosquito. Time flies. Everything in the past is like a dream. Now he is a giant mosquito monster that the entire human race needs to look up to. And that Yetongyu, and even everyone he knew. They are all just miserable human beings with nowhere to hide in the face of huge disasters. If we really want to use metaphors, they are just a microcosm of human beings in the face of disasters. They are not at the same level as the giant mosquitoes that can now travel all over the world and traverse the world. Boom 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 boom. Giant mosquito. What is this giant mosquito doing here in Shanghai? Human voices kept ringing in the dilapidated city below. The figure of the giant mosquito is really too attractive to everyone. But what attracted people at the same time were the things floating behind him that were flying with him. This is a well-organized, machine-like thing. 3 of them look like the metal monsters, but they are much larger than the metal monsters, and their appearance is even more ferocious. There are some metal monsters on their bodies that have not been seen before. Similar to the existence of a weapon system. As for the other 2, they have beautiful shapes, and they actually look somewhat similar to human figures. These metal machinery-like things, you can tell by looking at them that they are something special. But what's even more frightening is that they are actually suspended in the air, flying forward quickly following the giant mosquito monster. What is the principle? Are these all caused by giant mosquitoes? How did he do it? No one can answer it. But those metal machines were really following behind the big mosquito and flying forward. Naturally, they don't know that there is something called brainwave power in this universe, but even with brainwave power, it is extremely difficult to achieve this. Only some outstanding people can make such a heavy and huge thing. Things are suspended and flying in the planet. Jia Yan cannot carry these machines too fast. After all, there is gravity in the planet. Carrying these machines is 10 times more strenuous than carrying them in the universe. Not long after, the big mosquito's body arrived in front of a human military base. This place, as Jia Yan knows, is a place of strength occupied by relatively powerful humans. Perhaps there is still a little bit of past human psychology at play, so he will not give things to other countries that may have stronger scientific research capabilities, but will give these things to China. Bang bang bang. The huge body descended from the sky. The soldiers guarding the front of the military camp all had frightened faces, and their hands holding the steel guns tightly were full of nervousness. This big mosquito has become popular in all countries as early as a few days ago. The scene of it falling from the sky just now is especially memorable. As early as a few days ago, this mosquito had seen such a scene in the sky above Shanghai. At that time, they were still thinking about why this giant mosquito didn't come down and follow them to the metal monster that was invading at that time. But at this moment, but I don't want to see this giant mosquito. Human. Don't be impulsive. I don't mean any harm. Just at this time, a sound that horrified them all sounded faintly in the air, as if it was in everyone's ears. This voice has a unique male magnetism. It is the kind of young male voice that sounds beautiful no matter how many times you listen to it. His voice was a little hoarse, but very flavorful. But this kind of sound is obviously not something that humans can make. And based on the words of this voice, they could tell right away. This sound might actually be coming from the giant mosquito monster in front of me. This. Several soldiers were stunned for a moment. The guns in their hands were pointed at the giant mosquito monster slowly falling towards the ground, but they could not have the courage to shoot. Let me ask, not to mention that the giant mosquito monster's previous achievements have shown that this monster cannot be afraid of human firearms at all. Even a person who sees him for the first time will definitely know that this monster is not afraid of firearms at all. He is too big. It has a length of 10 meters, which is nothing, but its wingspan reaches 20 meters. Those slender 6 legs, if fully extended, can directly cover a radius of 40 meters. This is already the height of a 10-story house. Such a huge monster brings tremendous pressure to people. Even though the big mosquito seemed to have lowered its body as low as possible, it was still higher than the gate of the military camp. Let your leaders come over. Jia Yan tried his best to make his voice softer. In recent days, he has stepped up his language learning and finally significantly improved his pronunciation. Okay. The few guarding soldiers went to Shiyuan hearing Jia Yan's words again. They finally no longer doubted whether the sound was made by Jia Yan. One of them suddenly ran to the side. He didn't run away, but went to make contact. While running, he was extremely shocked in his heart. He actually talked to the giant mosquito. Is this a humming mosquito monster? He can still talk. The soldier still seemed to be in a state of fear. In fact, Jia Yan's arrival has been under observation for a long time, but humans have no idea of starting a war. Let's not talk about whether they can fight or not. Even with this giant mosquito's previous behavior, it is probably not on the same side as humans. On the opposite side. They have the same enemy, the metal monster. The news that the giant mosquitoes were able to talk was immediately passed to the top brass of the military camp. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 338. Thank you very much for your rewards and votes. 3 chapters were released today, and there will be 2 chapters soon. I hope everyone can continue to read and support the original version. Thank you. Not long after a simple risk assessment, several high-level generals, surrounded by some people, walked towards Jia Yan. It's not that they are not afraid of death, but they know the fighting power of the giant mosquito monster. If this giant mosquito wants their lives, they can't escape even if they hide in the military camp. They might as well come forward. These things are useful to you. I will leave them to you and let humans study them together. Jia Yan said these words after these people walked out. When he faced these human beings who may have a high status in China, or even in the entire human race, he did not have a trace of fear. Perhaps in the past, he had seen these big figures who could only be seen on TV or in the media. Sometimes, there will be feelings of nervousness and fear, but now he is a life form completely different from humans, and his combat power is even higher than that of humans. Humans can only look up to him, so seeing him at this time he won't have any trouble with these big shots of humanity. Mr. Giant Mosquito. You, hello, don't know this, what is this? Opposite was a young man wearing glasses, who seemed to be a representative. He stepped out of the square array opposite. When talking to Jia Yan, his mouth was trembling so much that Jia Yan was worried about whether his lips would shake off. However, this young man seemed a little familiar. After Jia Yan was reborn, his memory had greatly improved. Thinking back for a moment, a smile appeared in my heart. It turns out that this guy is a comrade who fought together on the northern border, a college student named Zhang Shiming. He actually got into the army, and it seemed that he was doing well. Otherwise, why would he stand up and talk to him at this time? What Jia Yan actually didn't know was, this young man is doing research on giant mosquitoes. Therefore, he was appreciated by the military. He raised troops for 1,000 days and used them for a while. At this time, he communicated with the giant mosquito. Such a dangerous thing. It must be him, the giant mosquito researcher, who steps forward. Although Jia Yan doesn't know how to reminisce about old acquaintances when he sees them. But his heart softened a little. Hello. This is what I am bringing you from the universe. These things have no effect on me anymore, but I believe they still have some effect on you people on Earth. Please study them with countries around the world. Bar. When Jia Yan said this, he stopped delaying. He immediately used the power of his brainwaves and tried his best to avoid the humans under his feet. What was blown away by myself rose upward into the sky. Mr. Giant Mosquito. You, where did you come from? What are you doing on Earth? Can you form a battle line with us to deal with the metal monster? Zhang Shiming, who was on the opposite side, saw that the big mosquito had the intention of leaving, and he immediately shouted out all the questions he had been holding in his heart for a long time. Perhaps this young man has more questions than the big mosquito he has been chasing for so long, but he only has time to ask so many at this time. However, Jia Yan only lowered his head slightly. His body and wings did not need to flap, but he was still flying. Jia Yan didn't say anything to this familiar young man's question. He just glanced at the people below and then flapped his wings. Whistle, roar, roar. Not long after, the big mosquito's speeding figure disappeared from everyone's eyes. Zhang Shiming, you did a good job this time. Looking at the stunned young man, several generals over there came out and affirmed the young man's boldness and carefulness. After they praised Zhang Shiming a little, they couldn't wait to walk in front of the huge machines. This must be something from a high-level civilization in the universe. This big mosquito really gave us an incredible gift. Well, these things are not something that our country in China can study. During this period, we must open up countries all over the world to participate. Presumably that giant mosquito monster, no. Mr. Giant Mosquito thinks the same way. If the combat effectiveness of us Earthlings can be improved, and his battle with metal monsters will also be a help. Of course, who can participate and what price they have to pay is entirely up to us. After all, Mr. Giant Mosquito didn't specify what he wants us to do. One day later, several pieces of news that made the whole world uproar spread throughout the world. When everyone on Earth heard the news, they were stunned and in disbelief. The first news is that the giant mosquito monster race they have always thought is just some monsters, at best a race with a little fighting intelligence, may actually be a cosmic civilized creature. Even the 10-meter giant mosquito monster on Earth now can speak Chinese. Regarding the identity of the giant mosquito monster, this is simply unbelievable shocking news. But compared to the first point, the news of the second point directly cheered up all human beings. That is, this giant mosquito monster communicated with the people of China and handed over 5 alien civilization machines that were obviously not products of the Earth into the hands of the people on Earth. These machines look like they are definitely several levels higher than the metal monsters that humans can't deal with now. 3 of them look like they are in the same vein as the metal monsters. I believe that by studying these machines, we can draw parallels and perhaps study the flaws of the metal monsters. This news is so exciting. Although there are some people who are not very optimistic, thinking that after fighting metal monsters for so long, humans have captured a lot of metal monster remains, but no country has said what they have researched. The giant mosquito monster will what's the use of giving seemingly more advanced things to humans? However, more people think that since the giant mosquito monster is a life form of the cosmic civilization, even if it is slightly similar to the mosquitoes on the Earth, but since it can reach the Earth from the vast universe, then the words he spoke and the handover of several mechanical remains to the people on Earth for study definitely had his deep meaning in them. Therefore, the research on these machines must not be like metal monsters, and it will definitely enable human beings to achieve rapid development in current combat or technology. If Jia Yan heard these remarks about having confidence in him, he would probably blush for a while. He just wanted to hand things over to humans to see if they would be of any use. As for whether humans could really research anything, he had no confidence at all. After all, those things are all fighting machines of 2 civilizations that are more advanced than the metal monsters. Compared with the mining machines like the metal monsters, their advancedness and rationality are not even a little bit more powerful. Although he didn't have much confidence in whether humans could really analyze and understand the structure of these machines, he was at least certain that those machines were not like metal monsters. When each one was destroyed, the body would appear. Damage. They have several structures that are absolutely complete. If the people on Earth are serious, they should gain something. After delivering all several things to humans, Jia Yan's compound eyes gained a deeper luster. He didn't think too much about handing over those machines to the people on Earth, he just wanted to have a possibility in the future. Anyway, those machines have little effect on Jia Yan, so handing them over to humans is a no-brainer. Okay, now, here's what I really want to do. Jia Yan looked at the distant sky and the white clouds in the sky were drifting in the wind. Because of the sunlight shining on the Earth, there is no gloom at all. What he has to do now is to return to Earth after such a long time. The thing I most want to do. It is also the greatest threat to him and the entire human race. Those red light buildings of metal monsters, he wanted to go to that place. After some investigation, even if you can't destroy one of them, you still have to take a closer look to see what wonderful things are there in these buildings. Jia Yan is still extremely confident in his ability to protect himself. At this time, his compound eyes were shining brightly. The body of the big mosquito was flying rapidly. Thanks to everyone for your rewards, 3 chapters have broken out, and this is the first. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 339. Chapter 2 of 3 explosions, please support genuine reading, thank you. I wonder if it was those buildings that made me aware of them. Just after Jia Yan's body flew a short distance out of Shanghai, 2 huge red rays of light shot in this direction from the distant sky. At this time, Jia Yan was flying at an altitude of more than 1,000 meters. His speed at this time was also close to the speed of sound. And at the same time that these 2 red rays of light appeared, Jia Yan's biological sensory organs had great feedback, telling him that something dangerous was approaching. His body had an instinctive reaction at this moment. It was instinctive, but it was something Jia Yan could control himself. He thought about dodging to the left, but in an instant, his body suddenly dodged to the left at a speed that he could barely react to. This kind of dodge is the fastest speed at which Jia Yan uses his wings and brain waves to propel himself. After Jia Yan discovered this way of moving has become his instinct after using it several times. This instinctive dodge, this method is so much better than the situation a few days ago when he was on the ground, avoiding those two red rays of light, which seemed extremely dangerous. It's simply a qualitative improvement. Jia Yan's body, at this moment, suddenly seemed to move sideways, violating the laws of physics and dodging to one side. And that's it. Swish. Two rays of light, almost in no particular order, rubbed his body and flew to one side. These two rays of light can be said to be silent. If no one pays attention, Jia Yan might be attacked by them, and there might be direct casualties. But at this time, Jia Yan avoided it. After that, all the directions on the horizon were visible. All the red rays burst out. Great. Could it be that these guys knew that I was going to attack one of their lairs? Otherwise, why would they suddenly go crazy like this? Jia Yan's compound eyes, which were shining with a faint luster, suddenly became very excited. If these metal monster buildings are really so afraid of him, then it shows how much of a threat he is in the eyes of the metal monsters. Not even inferior to the original Daphne. The original Daphne was even driven away by them. Where is Jia Yan? In these few battles, he finally figured it out. Compared to that Daphne, the gap between the current self and me may not be as big as imagined. Daphne will be driven away by you. But I will not be driven away that easily. Now I finally understand why these metal monsters regard my danger level as the same as that of Daphne. This is because my current single target combat ability must exceed Daphne. Even if she doesn't, if I use those powerful equipment, I can still kill her. Jia Yan really understands these things. He also understood that he was a creature with powerful combat power. I thought that Daphne didn't take his strength seriously, but in fact, he still thought of himself a little too low. If Daphne hadn't valued him, she wouldn't have used her power to bring Jia Yan to Neptune to help in the battle. What's more, now he has experienced another mutation and even gained more powerful brainwave power. His combat power has more than doubled or tripled compared to before. Since the metal monster values himself so much now, Jia Yan will naturally not fail to give him face. If you want to fight, then fight. There was a surge of energy in his body. He had just come down from the universe. Even the small village did not have time to take a look. They treated him like this. With such enthusiasm, how could he repay the other party without a crazy battle? Woolen cloth. At this time, Jia Yan felt that there was an inexplicable force in his body, and he had been suppressed. Of course he felt resentful, and now he wanted to fight back. Very good. Although your attack is strong, it also exposes your own location. Jia Yan's body moved sideways. Last time, he discovered that he could use brainwave power to assist in evasion. Now his body's flexibility has definitely improved a lot. While moving sideways, a red light with a diameter of more than half a meter suddenly flew close to his body and shot into the sky. At this time, the light in the big mosquito's compound eyes was even brighter. He saw that there was a red light shooting at him from a place only about 100 kilometers away from Shanghai. Obviously, there was a metal monster building there. The giant mosquito's body moved at once. It was like the shooting star, suddenly flying towards that direction under its own shining light. Being attacked by red rays again and again, even a small person will have his own temper, let alone Jia Yan. He wants revenge. And it was attacking the metal monster's building. Anyway, the strategy he originally thought up in space was to attack the metal monster's building. Now he has just come down from the universe with great effort. Although his brainwave power and physical strength have been consumed to a certain extent, the big mosquito believes that he can still fight. Of. The important thing is that when things are forced on you, there is no reason not to fight. You forced me so hard that I can't do anything without fighting now. Jia Yanfu's eyes were filled with gleaming light. Compared to last time, his biggest reliance was the way he used his brainwave power to avoid attacks. This method consumes a lot of brainwave power, but short-term bursts can still be used. Made it? Report. The big mosquito from before was attacked by the red light of the metal monster as soon as it left Shanghai City. How could this happen? How is the battle going? Is that giant mosquito injured? No, the giant mosquito's fighting power is so amazing. He completely avoided the attack of those red rays, and at this time, he flew towards the metal monster's stronghold in Suzhou. We estimate that he wanted to attack a base emitting red rays. So I came here to ask what we should do. What can we do? No. You quickly order 10 fighter jets to take off and cooperate with the giant mosquitoes to fight. Listen. Don't attack head-on. If you find that the battle situation is not right, evacuate directly. Do you understand? Understood. Just when Jia Yan was flying towards the building where the metal monster was emitting red light. The above conversation took place in the Chinese military camp he just left. After all, Jia Yan had just given them 5 things that might be extremely useful to humans before. Now the giant mosquito monster is suddenly in crisis. Although there is no verbal commitment, it is actually a human aspect that seems to be an ally. If you don't take any action, it's really not interesting enough. And why are those military bosses so stupid? They all know that the giant mosquito monster is too powerful, and their brains are definitely not stupid. If they are not sure, how can they attack the metal monster over there at will? What about an old nest? So not long after, 10 J-7s loaded with ammunition, led by a J-20, flew towards Suzhou where the giant mosquito was flying. For these fighter jets, go to Shiyuan are all driven by pilots who have engaged in actual combat many times in this battle, but in this case, all of them look a little angry. That is a red light building of a metal monster. They have suffered similar hardships before. It is not that there were no human fighter jets before, attacking the architectural nests of those metal monsters. However, what they were waiting for was often not to defeat the enemy, but to defeat them one by one, or even return to the capital without success. It's impossible to do it, just die one after another under the precise red light of the red light building. Compared with the red light emitted by the metal monster, the red light from the building is not only more accurate, but also much more powerful. A fighter plane only needs one red light. If it were just these 10 fighters, it would be easy and enjoyable to destroy them. Cheer up, everyone. Didn't the leader just say it? We just went over to express it. If that big mosquito can't win, we will retreat. If we can win, we will go over and put the icing on the cake. Everyone, be flexible. A little, you know. On the J-20, the veteran pilot leading this group of fighters was loudly sending out communications to his subordinates. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 340. The 3-chapter explosion is completed. Please subscribe to the official version if the data is good. There will be more explosions in the future. Thank you again to the book friends who rewarded me, thank you. This sound can also be heard from the command station below. Each of these people is smiling speechlessly. These pilots all have their own way of survival during the war. I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. However, it is precisely because of this mentality that some of the country's fighter planes can survive. Otherwise, the only advantage over the metal monsters, which is the advantage of flying, will be completely lost. And those buildings with red light will not attack human aircraft. After all, human aircraft, such as fighter planes, seem to be too weak and non-threatening to these metal monsters, so they do not bother to attack them. These fighter planes take off very quickly. but the one they were chasing was Jia Yan. At his current speed, even if he was taking off with these fighters, unless he deliberately let go, how could they catch up with his speed? What's more, he has already taken the first step, and the distance of more than 100 kilometers can be said to be almost instantaneous for the current big Mosquito. Just when those fighter pilots were dragging their feet one by one and finally getting 10 fighter planes into the air. Boom 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 boom. Suzhou, which is only more than 100 kilometers away from Shanghai, was also a city previously occupied by metal monsters. The body of a huge monster has already flown here. The shot of red light, getting closer. It is also more difficult to avoid. But Jia Yan's huge compound eyes are even more shining. The red rays of light behind his body were emitted from metal monster buildings elsewhere. Such a long distance was no longer something to be afraid of. The main threat is the huge building he is getting closer to. The body of the big Mosquito was almost even kilometers away from the city. It's already been discovered. At this time, there was an extremely huge silver shadow standing in the biting cold wind. It's so huge. It is about 350 meters long and covers an area of more than 300 meters. It is such a tall building. They are extremely rare among human buildings today. Even those human mansions and buildings around them. They are just used as a foil at the feet of this monster, just like a toy. They are nothing compared to the metal monster's buildings. Look from a distance. The majestic building looked like a dormant ancient beast. It has an indescribable ferocious aura. I finally see your true colors, but Jia Yan, the big Mosquito, didn't show any fear at all. He seemed to transform into a fighting fanatic. The desire to fight now is greater than ever before. As long as there is a way to deal with this architectural threat, then his safety and the safety of his family will be greatly guaranteed. All the time, he was shrouded in metal monsters and the terrifying shadow of this red light building. If there was a way to solve this building, maybe from now on, the looming haze above his head could be completely removed. Just as Jia Yan was observing over there, in the super huge building, a huge thing like a gun barrel suddenly shot out a red light in the direction of Jia Yan. The red light shoots out faster than before. Not good. Jia Yan was shocked. The closer he got to the building, the less time he had to react. After all, after the red light shot out of the barrel, the distance to reach him became shorter, so his reaction time became shorter. And of course, the less time you have to dodge, the faster you can dodge. Ying ying ying. At this moment, Jia Yan used his brainwave power to the maximum. At this moment, he felt a sudden throbbing pain in his head. This is the power of brainwaves, used to maximize results. He used the power of brainwaves to push his body, and at this moment, he moved sideways. At the same time, the wings were not idle, they exploded with all their power, allowing themselves to dodge quickly. The speed at which the two exploded together was simply unbelievable. Buzz. Jia Yan himself felt as if he was riding in his own aircraft, without the protection of gravity. This huge propulsion force even made him feel dizzy for a moment. Boom. At this moment, Jia Yan's body suddenly moved. And the red light was like a cannon soaring into the sky, piercing directly into space from beside Jia Yan's body. Its energy will not disappear for a long time. If there are any unlucky artificial satellites in its flight path, they may be hit by a cannon. Terrible power. But what's even more terrifying is Jia Yan's instant burst of speed. He even dodged the attack of red light at such a close range. Haha. From now on, you will no longer be a threat to me. Jia Yan's compound eyes briefly glanced at the flying red light, and the blazing flames in his eyes became more dazzling, as if they were about to turn into reality and burn everything. Boom boom boom. His wings flapped wildly. The brainwave power is also used to its limit. He's going to attack, attack, attack. The big mosquito's body rushed towards the huge building that was only about a kilometer away. His body is very large. Who can say that a creature that is fully 10 meters in size is not huge? But compared to that huge building located in the center of the city, occupying a full 300 to 400 meters in radius and 300 to 400 meters in height, such a figure can be said to be nothing worth mentioning. But the current situation is that Jiayan, a giant mosquito with a body of 10 meters, still has no fear at all and launched his own attack on this building. Like Don Quixote, attacking a giant windmill. However, Jiayan is not Quixote, and he is not that crazy. More importantly, Jiayan's power cannot be compared to that of Don Quixote. His body, at this moment, was changing so quickly. Jiayan felt that maybe he had flown so many times in his life after rebirth, but this was the first time that he had flown at such a fast speed. The roar of the flight has caused huge vibrations in the air. In the buildings below that no longer have human beings, pieces of glass were shattered by the concussion. Even a half-collapsed building collapsed due to the terrifying flying vibrations. Boom 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 boom. It is simply a roaring black dragon. The giant mosquito is now flying arrogantly, and it is already a monster comparable to a prehistoric beast. Even in terms of momentum, it was not much worse than the metal monster building facing him, trying to emit red light again. Boom 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 boom. It can be said that the body of the big mosquito has become almost teleporting. Too fast. Too fast, too fast. Even in that majestic building, the next red light has no time to attack. He already has an indomitable momentum. Boom. One head hit the middle of the huge building. Buh. At the same time, a red light was emitted very close at hand. But because the speed of the big mosquito is so fast, its aim can no longer keep up. Of course, the shot reached the sky. Click. Jiayan hit the center of the silver-gray surface of the building. In front of him is his sharp knife-shaped horn. The knife-shaped cuticles of the front feet stick out, but at the front of the knife-shaped cuticles, there is a hardened brainwave power, which is the most concentrated brainwave power, entangled together. The power of brainwaves is like a thin film, covering the entire knife-shaped cuticle. But at the first moment of impact, the membrane of brainwave power was completely shattered and ruptured by the force of the impact. The terrible reaction force caused Jiayan's head to feel dizzy for a moment. A faint trace of blood appeared on the tip of Jiayan's mouth parts. This was a mouthful of blood that he involuntarily spit out due to the violent concussion and the backlash of his brainwave power. Although he paid such a huge price, Jiayan smiled lightly in his heart. Click. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 341. Click. Just as he smiled a little, the silver-gray building surface in front of me suddenly made a crisp sound like an eggshell breaking. A little crack gradually appeared on the tip of Jiayan's knife-shaped horn, which also showed a slight defect. Click, click, click. Then, there were more and more cracks. The large silver-gray building surface in front of Jiayan suddenly looked like a spider web filled with cracks. It keeps making cracking sounds. Really? Jiayan looked at these cracks. When he descended to the ground, he had already explored the place where these buildings were located. Each of these metal monster buildings looks like a single piece, with nothing on the surface except a few protruding gun barrels. When Jiayan saw them from the sky, it was like seeing a huge piece of metal. It is estimated that their hardness is also extremely terrifying. But Jiayan would never believe that these buildings would be made entirely of iron blocks, because there must be structures inside that emit red light. It is absolutely impossible for ordinary buildings to withstand Jiayan's rapid impact. The speed at which he rushed forward was at least a dozen times the speed of sound. This speed is much faster than a bullet. Coupled with his own huge weight, even a steel plate more than 10 centimeters thick will be penetrated. Jia Yan used the knife-shaped horn on his front foot as a point of attack. This kind of power was even more powerful than ordinary artillery fire. As for the appearance of this building, when he looked at it before, he discovered that in order to defend against powerful attacks, they seemed to use something similar to a protective wall on the surface. The principle of this thing is even similar to that of brain waves. The power is somewhat similar. So in order to break him, not in the ordinary way. Instead, it should be like breaking through the brainwave power. Attack a point. It can be completely broken. Of course, this is all Jia Yan's judgment, but even if the so-called protective wall does not exist, Jia Yan attacks like this. That's right too. Even if there is a steel defense dozens of centimeters thick waiting for him, the most he can do is hit his head and bleed. In the building in front of Jia Yan, there are tiny cracks. After ping pong, a crisp sound exploded in front of him. The whole building seems to have an outer skin. It was severely shattered. This outer skin is like the silver snowflakes. It shattered into countless fragments in the air and spread all over the sky. At this moment, Jia Yan's body carried an indomitable momentum. Continue to rush forward fiercely. His speed is so fast. Even after the entire silver exterior of the building in front of him is shattered, still has strong kinetic energy, continue to attack. Boom 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 boom. The powerful kinetic energy moved this building. The whole thing became shaken. Jia Yan saw that the building in front of him was no longer that silvery and gorgeous, but was built using ordinary bricks and stones. It's normal to think about it. There are more than one metal monster buildings. If each building is made of metal, the amount of metal in each one is equivalent to building an aircraft carrier. Even a metal monster cannot build it in a short time. Just do something like this. Since what's underneath is just a masonry structure, Jia Yan is even more rude. His front feet used even greater power. Stab forward hard. Boom boom boom. Where human masonry is used, there is simply no possibility of resistance. A large piece of construction rubble fell to the ground. At this time, Jia Yan's eyes had a strong and fierce light. With the successful attack of the knife-shaped horns on his forefoot, all the organs in his body that could participate in the attack began to move. They attacked me again and again, thinking that I was easy to bully. Jia Yanzong grabbed a piece of wall, which was only poured with cement. At this time, he grabbed the wall and collapsed it in one fell swoop. Boom boom boom. The attack continues. With the power of the midfoot, the tail needle also began to be used. With a loud noise, a sharp object broke through the outer wall of the building and penetrated straight into the wall. His tail needle hasn't been used for a long time, but that doesn't mean this part has lost its offensive power. In fact, on the contrary, Jia Yan's attack power, except for the front legs, may be the most powerful attack power of the tail needle. However, the effect of the front legs is too powerful, so in recent battles, he still has the use of the tail needle. A little lazy. Finally, under Jia Yan's repeated attacks, the large area of the building facing him disintegrated. Pieces of masonry buildings fell to the ground, revealing a huge destroyed space of about 50 meters in front of Jia Yan. Enter. There was a faint luster in Jia Yanfu's eyes. After smashing such a huge gap in the building, it was enough for his body to enter this place that seemed like a dragon's pond and a tiger's den. The huge body of the giant mosquito struck again outside the gap, causing a building to collapse, and then flew forward without hesitation. Go inside the huge building. He never wanted to knock down this building in one fell swoop. That was unrealistic and impossible. The big mosquito penetrated deep into the enemy's lair and launched a continuous battle. At this time, the human fighter planes were still slowly flying towards the battlefield. These pilots, at best, were tactically advancing slowly, but at worst, they were fearful of combat. but their actions are also a guarantee of their survival. Otherwise, in this era, people who are too brave will not have enough lives to charge. But because of their slowness, they are destined to miss an absolutely intense show. A great show between giant mosquitoes and metal monsters and towering buildings. Boom 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 boom. From the huge building of hundreds of meters, there are constant sounds like bombing. Jia Yan was inside the building, thrusting continuously. He entered the interior and found that there were many metal monsters in the building. The number of floors in this building is more than 20 meters on the first floor. Although I don't know why it is built so high, it is just convenient for Jia Yan's movements. It can be said that he is lucky. There are metal monsters ahead, charging towards you. The sparkle in Jia Yan's eyes became more intense. These metal monsters looked no different from those in the outside world, but their bodies seemed smoother and brighter, like newly produced products. Die! Jia Yan stabbed the 7 or 8 approaching metal monsters with his forefoot, turning them into skewers and stabbing them in his forefoot. His brainwave power was used to its limit at this time. All approaching metal monsters, try your best to control them so that they cannot move. However, there were too many metal monsters, and Jia Yan could not control them all. There were still red rays of light attacking him at this time. Moreover, in this building, there is an internal defense muzzle at the top, which is already pointed at Jia Yan. Although it looks much smaller than the huge muzzle of the outside world, which is only 2 meters in diameter, it must not be that comfortable to endure. Sulfuric acid. Jia Yan stabbed the 2 metal monsters with one mouth part, and after penetrating them all, his wings flapped crazily. His body left the place in an instant. Next moment, the artillery fire suddenly emitted a crimson fire. The diameter of this fire is much smaller than the huge muzzle of the outside world, but its power is much greater than what the metal monster shoots. At this moment, Jia Yan immediately moved. He already had some exhausted brainwave power, and at this moment he suddenly pushed his body. Buzz. The strong sound of brainwave power oscillating sounded in the air. Jia Yan's body was like an antelope hanging its horns in the air, leaving no trace behind. It bounced to the side in an instant. This huge red light hit the building directly. Bo. In the building, a huge riot suddenly occurred. Jia Yan only saw that the world in front of him suddenly turned red, covering his entire sight. The next moment, time seemed to have stopped. Then an incredible explosion appeared in front of Jia Yan. Boom boom. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 342. Jia Yan only felt that his body seemed to be involuntarily hit by the shockwave of the explosion in front of him, flying up, and then smashed against the wall of the building. Phew! A mouthful of bright red blood suddenly spurted out from his mouth. At the same time, he saw a huge hole being knocked out of the wall behind him, and Jia Yan's body was severely knocked out of the huge building. However, since he was not hit head-on by the red light, Big Mosquito's mind was just a little depressed at this time, and his physical injuries were not serious. Take care of you first, the shockwave continued, and next to him was a metal monster that was blown out together. However, Jia Yan did not pay attention to them. He just continued to return towards the hole with his compound eyes faintly. The huge cannon barrel that was slowly moving over the head and aimed at it lost its target. Jia Yan rushed into the building. The first thing in sight is the huge 2-meter barrel that is still adjusting the muzzle. This gun barrel is in this building, and I don't know if it is used to defend against enemies from the outside, but it seems that it is still very useful. Under this attack, Jia Yan was not only bombarded out of the building, but also his body. There are also some injuries. Fortunately, he reacted very quickly and returned directly, minimizing the impact of the opponent's bombardment. Jia Yan used the momentum of his re-entering the building to rush towards the barrel. At this moment, his front feet suddenly made a faint sound. This sound is not because there is something wrong with the front foot, but because at this moment, Jia Yan continues to exert his brainwave power with all his strength, covering the thousand-legged knife-shaped horn. The front foot has a thin protective film. In addition, the knife-shaped cuticle itself is very sharp and sharp. Now the knife-shaped cuticle is extremely sharp and hard. The way he flaps his wings, coupled with the power of his brainwaves, is like cheating in battle. It's so fast and flexible. Boom boom boom. Right there the barrel was still turning. When you want to continue to emit red light in the direction of Jia Yan's thousand-legged knife-shaped horn. It has penetrated hard into the bottom of the barrel. You are made of steel, you are full of technology, but under the huge power, there is still no chance of any luck. Strong individual power at this time. Revealed. Jia Yan's pair of thousand-legged knife-shaped horns pierced directly into the base of the barrel. He believed that no matter how sophisticated the structure of this cannon was, no matter how strong the defense is, if the base is destroyed, so no matter what the principle is, there must be no possibility of survival at all. As expected. Just as Jia Yan pierced the base of the gun barrel directly, even activates power instantly. After violently stirring it up inside. Click. Only a crisp sound was heard, the 2-meter diameter steel muzzle. It was actually completely cut off by Jia Yan. Hit the ground. Bang. Make a huge sound. Very good. Next, it's the bigger one. Jia Yan looked at this huge thing that fell to the ground and was trying to remember it. When that huge cannon barrel flew away from the floor it was on. Jia Yan's moving figure suddenly froze. His eyes were on the gun barrel on the ground. The cannon barrel that he cut off, including the base, was cut off smoothly by Jia Yan's thousand-legged knife-shaped cuticle. And on that base, there was a faintly shining object, which was very eye-catching in Jia Yan's eyes. Jia Yan was shocked at first, and then became overjoyed. This shimmering object has a wonderful blue luster. It is attached to the base of the gun barrel. If Jia Yan hadn't cut it in the right direction, it would have been impossible for Jia Yan to see this object directly. Because it is directly in the safest place protected by the barrel. And this thing, its flashing luster, and its hint of appearance made Jia Yan recognize its true identity at a glance. Azure blue crystal. When Jia Yan saw this thing, he was extremely surprised. According to what Daphne told him, this thing is the star condensation that all alien civilizations will be moved by. Their effect is really too great. It is precisely because the Earth has these things, so if those alien civilizations knew of their existence on Earth, they might move out in large numbers and come to Earth for mining. And they are also incredibly powerful and good things for Jia Yan. He just fused a piece of azure crystal, but its powerful influence has been the backbone of his defense until now. At this time, Jia Yan's only thought was to collect it as soon as possible. His body was extremely fast. Before several metal monsters around him seemed to be going crazy and swarmed towards the barrel, they jumped down and raised their front legs. Click. A slight voice appeared. In Jia Yan's heart, an incredible attraction suddenly came from his front feet. What a powerful attraction! I didn't expect that I have evolved to this point, and the azure blue crystal can actually have such a strong attraction for me. Jia Yan had a surprise in his heart. The azure crystal had already been evoked from his forefoot, but at this time, he had no time to see if there were other azure crystals in the barrel, and those metal monsters nearby. All of them were going crazy, and they were all stiff. No. They're going to blow themselves up. When Jia Yan saw this, his scalp went numb. There were at least 70 or 80 metal monsters in front of him. If they exploded in one breath, it would be a terrifying thing for him. Fly. Boom boom boom. A huge red light flashes up. In the red flames, a huge dark monster was seen, quickly darting through the flames and flying out of the explosion range. Behind them are the blazing flames, but the flying speed of the big mosquito even exceeds these flames. Can't catch up? Boom boom boom. Jia Yan looked at the power of the explosion behind him. Countless rocks were splashed behind him, and some of them hit his body, causing a surge of defense in his body. But it has no impact on him at all. Those metal monsters are crazy. I just grabbed a piece of blue crystal and actually blew up my lair into this. Jia Yan had no choice but to fly out of the damaged part of the building under the force of these self-destructions. When he looked back, the scenery behind him made him speechless. In that place, due to the self-destruction of nearly 100 metal monsters, a huge gap had appeared, and a quarter of the entire building collapsed. The smoke and dust from the explosion slowly rose into the sky, forming a huge mushroom cloud in the sky. The entire space above my head was covered in smoke and dust. There was almost nothing visible on the ground, it was all dust from collapsed buildings. The temperature here is not low. When the flames touch anything in the air, they will burn directly. Some of the remaining human buildings began to burn blazingly. Click, click, click. However, in this smoke and dust, many metal monsters were thrown out one by one from the huge collapsed building, and most of them were still intact. In that collapsed part, Jia Yan even saw more than one 2-meter diameter gun barrel. Even the huge gun barrel outside the building is still half broken, hanging on the outside of the building. Its barrel has a faint luster, as if it will emit red light at the next moment. We can't let them form a fighting force. Charge! When Jia Yan saw this, the raging fighting spirit in his heart emerged again. At this time, he cannot choose to escape. If you want to escape, go to Shiyuan. Just leaving so many gun ports on his back would be dangerous. When we meet on a narrow road, the brave one wins. The knife-shaped cuticle of the forefoot, which must have been damaged, was stretched out again. Directly on its surface, there is a brainwave membrane that buzzes and screams strangely, covering it. Jia Yan's body also moved. At this moment, which can be described as a paradise where correct judgment means victory, and a hell where making mistakes means defeat, he made plans to continue fighting. The next moment he made a plan. His sharp knife-shaped horns. Kankan is already getting closer to the base of the huge architectural gun barrel. Clang. Phew.